Janofsky, thank you for being with us today. And let me do the introduction and then I will hand it over to her. Jen Janofsky, PhD, is the Giordano Fellow in Public History at Rowan University and Director of Red Bank Battlefield Park. She's the co-director of the Red Bank Archaeology Project, which made headlines around the world in 2022 with the discovery of a Hessian mass burial. Janofsky earned her PhD from Temple University, where she studied early American history and public history. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the McNeil Center for Early American Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. At Red Bank Battlefield Park, she's responsible for all aspects of park interpretation, including public programs, tours, preservation, exhibition, and grants management. At Rowan University, she teaches classes in public history, American material culture, early American history, and directs the history department internship program. She's worked in the field of public history for over 20 years, prioritizing community engagement and the production of accessible history. In 2022, the Daughters of the American Revolution awarded her the Award for Excellence in Community Service. In 2023, the Sons of the American Revolution awarded her the Silver Good Citizenship Medal. I'm glad that balanced out. The New Jersey Historical Commission recognized the Red Bank Battlefield Archaeology Project for its significant contribution to New Jersey history in 2023. And in 2024, Rowan University awarded Janofsky the 2024 Rowan University Engagement Award. So I will now hand this over to Jen so we can learn more about her work.
Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's so great to see familiar faces and old friends on the call. So I'm super excited to discuss this project, and I appreciate you welcoming me to share the remarkable story of this project that is now entering its third year. So I will share my screen. I'll go for like 45 minutes or so, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at the end and discuss some project updates, what's been going on. Okay. Okay, so first and foremost, before we even get into the presentation, it's important to note that Wade Katz is the co-director with myself of the Red Bank Archaeology Project. This presentation that I'm sharing with you is a product that we've developed over the past 3 years, and so he is very much a crucial part of the work that we're doing at Red Bank and deserves recognition. As we go through the presentation, I will give you a heads up when we are going to be taking a look at images of human remains. I think it's important to understand the remains as a human artifact and how we're interpreting them and studying them, and of course, treating them with dignity and respect. I would just ask that you please not screenshot any of those images. We are fiercely protective of these soldiers, and we never want to see them in a social media context, that doesn't have appropriate attribution. This is our project team. I am one person of many who has been working hard on this for the past 3 years, and I always think it's important to recognize the efforts of the entire team. I am a public face of this because I am a public historian, but please recognize that all the individuals who you see on the screen right now are professional archaeologists, scientists, bioarchaeologists who have been contributing amazing work to this project. We can't do what we do without their efforts. These are our funders and our partners. We have grown from a small public archaeology project into a full-blown science project. And so over the years, we've accumulated many funders and supporters. And of note, the New Jersey Historical Commission, who continues to support our efforts, and the New Jersey Council for the Humanities. And before we even begin discussion of the history of Red Bank and that site, it's important to acknowledge and understand that this was a site of indigenous occupation for thousands of years before European settlement. We do not put a shovel in the ground without finding indigenous material, and it's a story that we're working actively to incorporate into our park interpretation. So by way of a little bit of background, if you're not familiar with Red Bank, or you maybe need like a quick geography lesson about where we are, because there are two Red Banks, which I realize can be confusing. We are the South Jersey, Gloucester County Red Bank, not Monmouth County Red Bank. Red Bank Battlefield Park is a part of the Gloucester County Parks and Recreation System. So I work for both Gloucester County's Parks and Rec Department as well as Rowan University. We are a 44-acre park that's located directly across from Philadelphia International Airport, as well as Fort Mifflin. So you can literally see the city of Philadelphia skyline when you're standing on the lower deck of the park. We have amazing views of the Delaware River. If you have little ones and you love watching planes taking off from the airport, it's a wonderful place to come. But of course, the reason why we exist as a park is because of the tremendous history that took place there over 250 years ago. And so when you visit the park today, we're not dissimilar from Valley Forge. We're a recreational park that offers history opportunities. And so we have the remains of Fort Mercer, we have several monuments, and we have the historic James and Anne Whitehall House from 1748, which is open for tours from April through October. So just by way of background for the Battle of Fort Mercer, the Battle of Red Bank, so everybody's on the same page and understands like sort of physically what was happening in this space. We're talking about the Philadelphia Campaign of 1777, and we're talking about the British occupation of Philadelphia in September. So after the Battle of Brandywine, the British seized the rebel capital. Much to their chagrin, the revolution does not stop. In fact, the Patriots further entrenched themselves in defending the region. And of no end of consternation for the British that fall was access to the Delaware River. When the British took Philadelphia, it was by land. It was not by the Delaware River. They come up through the head of Elk, Maryland, go through Delaware, eventually come into Philadelphia, sort of by the back door. But the river remained elusive to them for a couple of reasons. And so if we're looking at this map here, this image on the map, there's a couple of things going on. One is you can see several boats stuck behind this line of X's here. These are called chevaux de frise. These are underwater obstructions that Patriot forces sunk, designed to pierce the hull of British ships trying to get up the river. So sort of similar to like the Great Chain in New York. This is the Great Chain of Philadelphia, except they're wooden structures under the water. And then there's a series of river fortifications designed to protect the river. And so here we are, Fort Mercer, Red Bank. Across Mud Island is Fort Mifflin, and to the south is Fort Billingsport. So between these various obstructions, the British were really chomping at the bit, trying to get needed supplies into the city before the winter. Fort Mercer is constructed on the land of Quakers James and Anne Whitehall. So their property was seized to construct this massive fortification. It was an earthen fortification, and the raw material for the fort was actually taken from the Whitehall property. So, for example, James Whitehall actually had a very successful brickyard and lumber yard. Those materials were used for the construction of Fort Mercer. And there's also their fruit orchards were also used for the construction of Fort Mercer. So economically, the Whitehall family is devastated by the fort being constructed on their property. But they would have seen some interesting activity happening in October of 1777. That's when two regiments from Rhode Island, the 1st and the 2nd Rhode Island Regiment, are sent by George Washington to defend Fort Mercer. And commanding the garrison is this guy here, Colonel Christopher Green. And Colonel Christopher Green is a really interesting individual. I think what makes the Rhode Island Regiment so compelling at this moment in time is that it's a fully integrated fighting force. Native Americans, African Americans, white soldiers fighting side by side to defend Fort Mercer. There's roughly 400 to 500 of these individuals in Fort Mercer. The attacking force is not going to be British, it's going to be Hessian soldiers. So German soldiers hired by the British Crown as auxiliary soldiers to take on Christopher Green and his Rhode Island Regiment. In terms of the attacking force of the Hessian soldiers, we're looking at about 1,200 individuals. So 1,200 versus about 400. Hessians being the premier fighting army of the 18th century. And so if you were a betting person in October of 1777, you probably would not have put your money on the Rhode Island Regiment. The Battle of Red Bank takes place on October 22nd, 1777. And by all accounts, this is an all-out rout. The battle's over in 45 minutes. If we were doing a deep dive into the Battle of Red Bank, we could talk a lot about the French engineering that took place to make the fort more defensible. But I'm trying to move through this so we can get to the archaeology component of this project. It's one of the worst losses of Hessian life in the American Revolution. The day of the battle, there are 111 dead with dozens more injured. And if you were to look up, like Google, how many Hessian died at the Battle of Red Bank, you're going to find all kinds of wild numbers. They're all over the place. But this figure of 111 is actually the most up-to-date figure we have, thanks to our project historian, Robert Seelig. understanding that in the days and weeks that followed the battle, dozens and dozens of more individuals passed from their injuries. You can see on the screen here pictures of both chain shot and bar shot, which I will come back to, used by the Pennsylvania Navy to actually attack that Hessian army. And I'm always struck by the words of the Hessian soldiers who participated in that battle, what they wrote about it and the challenges of that battle. For example, this is from Second Lieutenant Carl Wilhelm von Billingslowen of the Mirbach Regiment. There was nothing to do but die or retreat. In terms of figures, this is the latest up-to-date numbers we have from Bob Seelig and his research. So you can see here 111 are dead on October 22nd, but in the days and weeks that follow, that number climbs to 239. Interestingly, the Mirbach Regiment, which was part of three attacking forces in the battle, never fought another battle in the American Revolution because their numbers were so decimated on October 22nd. So what happens the day after the battle? Where is everybody buried? Well, most documents that we've taken, all documents that we've taken a look at, documented that space to be in close proximity to the Whitehall House, because the Whitehall House was used as a field hospital in the days following the battle. So it was expedient for the burials to happen immediately outside of the house. And you can see on two different maps here, for example, here's the Whitehall House, here's the soldiers' graves, here's von Donop's grave. This is a Hessian account identifying where the burial space is near the Whitehall House. And that was our understanding of where the burials were located in the park. In terms of the treatment of the dead, on October 23rd, Christopher Green orders the garrison to bury the dead. Here are some primary sources that talk about how challenging the work was. This day was spent with the greatest care, bringing in the slain, burying the dead, taking proper care of the wounded. Interestingly, the source from Sergeant John Smith of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment is extremely helpful for our work, noting that we buried 75 in one grave and another 8 to 10 in another grave. And so our understanding of where the burials were located at Red Bank is really important to understanding the work that we were doing in 2022. And I'll get into that in a second. So in 2020, we had the opportunity in Gloucester County to purchase a small 1/4 acre lot that had never been incorporated into the main boundary of the park. For whatever reason, when the park was incorporated in 1906, this parcel did not come into the park. And you can see here the project area, it's extremely small. It's at the northern boundary of the park. When we took a look at the parcel, it was extremely interesting to us because if you're familiar with Red Bank at all, there's an original trench system that defended Fort Mercer. That trench system seemed to continue underneath the parcel that was of interest to us. And so Gloucester County, through the Office of Land Preservation, added that parcel into the park's boundaries in 2021. We received funding in 2022 to do an archaeological survey of this new addition to the park. And so this was funded through the New Jersey Historical Commission. One of the things that we wanted to do with this project was incorporate the public into it and to get the public involved. The archaeologist for the project was Wade Katz. I had worked with Wade on an ABPP project back in 2014 in the park. And one of the things that really impressed me as a public historian is the connection with our park visitors and the archaeology team. People love archaeology. They love watching archaeology. They love participating in archaeology. So as a public historian, I'm always looking for ways to better connect with our public and with our visitors. So we designed 4 days of public participation where people could literally dig side by side with the archaeology team under close supervision and learn about the archaeological process and why it's so important for preservation and telling the story of Red Bank. And this is one of my favorite project pictures. This is archaeologist Dana Link offering a masterclass in archaeology with people who are participating in the project. We had 100 people participate, again, under the supervision of a professional archaeology team. We also worked with members of the Archaeology Society of New Jersey. And here's some pictures of some of the amazing individuals involved with this project. Always lucky to work with Dr. Dave Orr here and Drew Stanzeski, amazing archaeologists who have so much to offer to our park visitors. So on the last day of the project, in the mid-afternoon, one of our volunteers who works with ASNJ approached Wade and I to discreetly let us know that they believed that they had found a femur. And that was an amazing moment. Everything stopped. We cleared the site and we started to put county resources into motion to understand what the appropriate next steps would be. It's a little confusing because we are a county park in the state of New Jersey. And so who is the first call to? And it was the local authorities. The West Deptford police came out to investigate to see if it was a crime scene. It wasn't a crime scene. I mean, it was in the 18th century, but not in the modern sense of it. And we eventually connected with the New Jersey State Police Forensic Anthropology Unit. The major question that they had was it human remain or was it animal remains? And so this is archaeologist Wade Katz right here at the bottom of the unit with Dr. Anna Delaney of the New Jersey State Police. She visited 2 days later and determined that it was human remains. And in fact, there were more human remains at the bottom of that unit. So Gloucester County entered into a cooperative relationship with the New Jersey State Police, who would supervise the removal of the remains and tried to determine what actually was happening here in this site. Important to understand that it started with one femur. We needed to get into the archaeological context to better understand whose burial this was. Was it a Whittle family burial? Was it an indigenous burial? None of this was immediately clear in the moment after the discovery. So this is the excavation space, as you can see. It ended up being a giant trench, roughly 30 by 10. Our field work extended from the discovery of the remains in mid-June until the first week in August. A collaborative effort that included the efforts of many volunteers who committed many hours supporting the archaeology team in the removal of those remains. So one of the things that began to emerge in the archaeological context as the archaeologists were working on the remains is that we started to theorize that we had a undocumented Hessian mass burial. And that's because the remains, in association with the remains, were 20 impacted musket balls. And these are American balls. And they were in close association with the remains. And you can see here some of the examples. These are American balls. This ball right here is in association with an arm bone. So one of the things is I should add, I'm not an archaeologist. I work with the archaeology team. So how can I support the archaeology team when this is going on as a historian? And it's going back through the primary sources, trying to get a better handle on physically where we were working at the fort and how we can better understand what we were seeing in the archaeological record. And so just to give you a sense of physically where we were working, this is a period map of Red Bank and Fort Mercer. And basically where this red star is, we're looking at the approximate site of the Mirbach attack on Fort Mercer. So this is the bottom of the trench. This is where the majority of the remains were recovered. And everywhere you see a yellow star is actually where a crania or a mandible was recovered. And I think it's important to understand that the individuals that we recovered, number one, was not a formal burial. This is essentially what we're talking about is battlefield gore that was unceremoniously pitched to the bottom of the trench in the days following the battle. And so there are no coffins, nobody is laid out, there are no shroud pins or anything of that nature. And so you can see the scatter at the bottom of the trench where those remains were removed. So going back to the primary sources, trying to understand, okay, what can cause like this type of damage to the human body? And looking at the Hessian accounts documenting the types of just injuries that they were seeing. These aren't even necessarily deaths, but consistent with what we were finding. Types of wounds, including right leg shot apart, both legs shot to pieces, shot through both legs, shot through the chest and arm. So you get the idea. I think one of the challenges of doing public history at a Revolutionary War battlefield site is helping people understand the violence of a Revolutionary War battlefield. I'm sure many of you are excited for the new Ken Burns series. It is a conversation that he leans into so that people fully appreciate the violence of this conflict. So what causes that? Going back again through the primary source documentation, if you recall earlier, I talked about the role that the Pennsylvania Navy played in supporting the Rhode Island regiments in the battle. And one of the things that we know about the Pennsylvania Navy is they were firing chain shot and bar shot. So you can see an example of chain shot here that's on display at the Museum of the American Revolution in Philly. So these are incredibly expedient at attacking ships, taking out a ship's rigging, a ship's masting, cracks it, brings it right to the ground, fired out of a cannon with extreme velocity. Now imagine using that against human personnel and the type of injuries that it could inflict. In fact, we know that the Hessian officers, like for example, Lieutenant Levin Karl von Heister, was wrote that two ships which could not be seen fired chain shot and bar shot into the flank. The latter knocked down entire rows of men. So interestingly, while the maps and the primary sources that we consulted prior to the project, as always, before we open up a unit, we always understand, the documentation of where we're going to be digging. But what came to our attention through Dr. Scott Stevenson of the Museum of the American Revolution is that he remembered displaying this incredible powder horn that you can see on your screen. When the Museum of the American Revolution displayed the powder horn of John Burlingame, who was in the 2nd Rhode Island Regiment, they displayed the other side of the powder horn, not seen in this picture, and that was of Valley Forge. But Scott remembered that Burlingame had been at Red Bank. And what's fascinating about the Burlingame powder horn is that it fully documents the burial space, almost exactly where we were working, which is absolutely an incredible piece of material culture. So I can just point out a couple of details of this. Number one, here is Red Bank, spelled R-E-A-D. I'm actively researching Burlingame. He actually starts the revolution illiterate and develops some level of literacy as he progresses through the war, which is really interesting. But of interest to our project is his documentation of the trenches of Fort Mercer. And so this space here is a trench, and you can see here's an individual, a Hessian at the bottom. Here is a head, here is another head, here is a decapitated individual. This individual over here is missing a leg. I think it's particularly interesting that the facial hair that he documents on the Hessians, which was of much curiosity to the Americans. But while we did not have the traditional written documentation about this burial site, John Burlingame documented it. And I will add that John Burlingame was 17 years old on the day of the Battle of Red Bank and was ordered to clear the field of the dead. And so no doubt this left a very deep impression on him. So this is the remains. This is the situation that we were working on. And I show these pictures because number one, I want people to understand the extreme level of care, respect, and dignity afforded to the remains. The individuals who were part of the team that worked to remove the remains are professionals. They take their project seriously. This is Dr. Anna Delaney. This is Dr. Stuart Alexander. He's a forensic dentist consultant with the New Jersey State Police. And this is Dr. Tom Christ, who's a nationally renowned bioarchaeologist. And so we removed the remains in the hope of understanding who these individuals were. So let's take a look at some of that material culture and history. The artifacts of battle. There's about 100 artifacts associated with the project, many of which are on display at the Whitehall House, and you'll be able to see them when we reopen in 2026 for tours in April. We have buttons, we have knee buckles, we have hooks, we have some fabric, which I think is really fascinating. Some of the fabric survived on the back of the buttons, and we are actively working to analyze that. We don't have any complete uniforms. We don't have any evidence of burial in uniforms. As I said before, the working theory is that this is, battlefield gore at the end of the day. And we also have this incredible 1766 British gold guinea coin that was recovered on the project. And we know that the Hessian Grenadiers were rewarded for their service after the Battle of Germantown by gold guinea coins. And so interesting to think about a connection that could possibly be there. In terms of the ongoing research, Dr. Robert Seelig is our project historian. I'm sure many of you on the call know Bob well. He's a tremendous asset to the team. He's been back and forth to Germany several times to the Marburg archives, actively working to research the regiments, the dead, and trying to develop a profile who some of our individuals could be. We very recently just received funding from Villanova's Lepage Center to continue to support Bob's research and process the volumes of material that he has been collecting in Marburg. So in terms of the project goals and what we're doing and what we're working on, number one is to honor the fallen, to make sure that the remains are treated with dignity and with respect and with care. The remains are currently at the New Jersey State Police Forensic Anthropology Lab undergoing testing, which I'll talk about in another minute. Use all the evidence. This was a project that started off as a public archaeology project with myself and Wade Katz. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a project that has grown to include experts in forensic science, the University of Georgia Stable Isotope Team, Dr. Raquel Flusquez of Dartmouth University working on ancient DNA, and of course, all the historical research that's going into this project. As a public historian, it's important to me that we share their stories, that we try to create moments of connection with the public. Most people aren't super familiar with the Hessians. If they're going to watch Ken Burns, they're going to learn all about it from Frederica Bear, which is wonderful. But just trying to understand and give them context about who these individuals were and how they found themselves at this moment in America. Uh, the potential to connect the past and the present. If you're familiar with some of the amazing DNA projects going on right now, specifically Camden, South Carolina burial project, they are doing active DNA studies trying to connect the individuals they recovered at their battlefield with a modern day descendant community, which would be incredible. I will add that that is going to be a very difficult task, but there is the potential of it. And then finally, to memorialize the dead, to respectfully reinter the remains and create an interpreted and memorialized space at Red Bank Battlefield Park. And so how are we working with communities to share this story? So we have any number of publics. You know, when I teach public history, I always emphasize to there's not one public, there are many publics. And so this has been an amazing project in terms of how many different kinds of organizations we're connecting with and speaking with, which is truly a pleasure. So we speak anywhere from organizations like yours, local libraries, community organizations. I've had a blast going to middle school and high schools, which has been incredible, getting students excited about the intersection of science and history and archaeology. It's been amazing to see the good work that our teachers are doing in New Jersey's classrooms and how excited they are to partner with us. Of course, as you heard in the beginning, we work very closely with the DIR and the SAR, who have been strong supporters of the project, civic organizations, and professional conferences. And so just when we think things are calming down and people have maybe lost interest in the project, we get a whole new round of invitations to do talks and presentations. And so that is thrilling for us to continue to get to share this story with individuals like you. We have an international public. One of the wonderful things after the announcement of the discovery in 2022 was the outpouring of emails from Germany. It was truly fascinating opening my email in August of 2022, never knowing what was going to be in that inbox and who was reaching out to us. But one of those individuals was the person that you can see on the screen right now, Iliane Meschernick, who herself is German. There's some sort of Hessian connection. She's not even completely sure herself. She was raised to understand that there was some sort of Hessian service in their family's background. But she came to visit us in August of 2023 with her family of five from Germany, and she placed a flag and a memory stone at the burial discovery site. And so that's an amazing moment of connection for us. We've also been in conversation with the German War Graves Commission. And so we frequently get asked, what does Germany think about this? And our Office of County Council had reached out to the German consulate prior to the announcement in the media, invited them to come visit the site, meet the team, see how the remains were being handled, address any concerns that they might have had, invite them into partnership if they wanted to work with us. But essentially, they said, thanks for the heads up, and that was it. And so that was somewhat disappointing, though we're going to try and revisit that conversation as we near the end of our analysis. But the German War Graves Commission has been a different story. So the German War Graves Commission is responsible for reinterring the dead in any sort of European theater. They're not particularly interested in having the remains come back to Germany or anything like that, but it's been helpful to have a sounding board with them to talk about what our plans are, to solicit feedback, especially as we're talking about plans to memorialize and reinter, to have some type of conversation there to get that type of input that the consulate wasn't necessarily offering to us. We also have our university public. And so this has been one of the great joys of mine as a professor of history at Rowan University is to incorporate our students into every aspect of this project. And so you can see two of our students here. This is Brendan Coulthurst and Annabelle Sebastian working with Mike Benson of Rowan's Digital Scholarship Center, and they did full photo documentation of the remains for our forensic team. And so I will add that that is not an easy task as a college student to work with human remains, and we had some really powerful conversations about that. But they contributed very meaningful work to the project. And we also work with our history interns. This is Abby Eeler over here working on installing our exhibit of material culture from the exhibit. So offering our students, inviting our students into the moment, whether it's to participate in the science or the public programming or the public interpretation, is a critical part of the work that we do at Rowan. In terms of project methodologies, we're using everything that we can basically find funding for to help give our individuals more context. And so through the New Jersey State Police, we are lucky enough, they've committed tremendous resources to the project, including the work of two of their facial reconstruction artists. And so we had two individuals who were eligible for facial reconstructions. And this is Officer Mo Martinez working on individual number 9 to develop that facial reconstruction. And one of the things that I've learned about facial reconstruction is that it's really hard work and it's somewhat rare to get a really good facial structure for a good facial reconstruction. And so it's an uh, incredible opportunity that we have with this project to be able to offer this to people, who are invested in our work. And so I hope you're all ready to meet number 9. He is quite impressive. And here he is. He is portrayed as a grenadier in the von Lossberg Regiment. He has facial hair, as you can see. We consulted with the artist Don Troiani on all the elements of the uniform. But I think this is an incredible moment of connection. We don't want people to see these as just a pile of bones. The mission of the project is to see these individuals as human beings. And the work of the facial reconstruction, I think, continues to really impress people. It's not unusual when we do these presentations in a live setting to hear people gasp when they see these pictures. And so it's a really powerful moment. And we also have a facial reconstruction for number 7, which is this individual right here. And so we always like to shout out the New Jersey State Police and the good work that they've done supporting us in this project. And they are thrilled that people are so impressed with the work that they've contributed to it. So a really remarkable partnership. So, in terms of park opportunities with this discovery, prior to 2022, I think we were doing a pretty good job of telling the Hessian story, of trying to make it more human, more nuanced, more complicated. But obviously, this discovery puts us on sort of a different trajectory of the types of conversations that we're having with our park visitors. We're currently working on a new interpretive plan to bring together all of these storylines and support our park staff and volunteers in how we interact and engage with the public. I think when people visit a Civil War battlefield site, they know that there's going to be a conversation around violence, but that's not always the case when we talk about a Revolutionary War battlefield site. And so, how do you have ethical conversations with the public in this type of space? Understanding that not everybody is 100% comfortable discussing violence and loss and pain and suffering. And so, we're working on strategies for good public engagement to meet people where they're at. But also, we feel like we're a place that is an incredible location to be having these types of conversations. So how do we know that we're connecting with the public? You're not a good public historian if you're not reflective in thinking about how you're engaging with the public. How can we be doing a better job? What is something that we haven't leaned into that's a missed opportunity? So we know that people are interested in this project. As I said earlier, the calls for presentations just keep coming, and we welcome all of those calls every time. In the days following the announcement, we had the site open. The remains had been removed, but the burial trench was still there. And we invited people to come visit the site so we could talk to them about the project and the work that we're doing. In the days that followed, hundreds and hundreds of people, like the cars just kept coming. It was exhausting, but like in the best possible way, because people were just so moved and interested in talking about the experience and what the project had hoped to do. Public visitation is through the roof, which is something that we love to see in the park, especially with 2026 coming. Our programs are very well attended. Our most popular walking tour in the park is the Hessian Discovery Tour. We try to limit it to 15 people, and the requests for people to add us to the tour happen every time we do this. And so I think to date, we've given probably close to 400 people have taken this walking tour over the past year, which is a remarkable opportunity to talk about the history of the site through exhibits, through public programming, and through presentations like this one. So what are those points of connection? And this is something that I study in my own line of work, understanding how can we connect with the public. And I think that's through empathy. And so sort of understanding pain, suffering, an individual moment in time, complicating our understanding of the enemy. Who were these guys? Where were they here? Again, if you really want to know about the Hessians, go pick up Frederica Baer's book. She does an excellent job of discussing the motivations and the rationale for many of the Hessian soldiers who ended up on America's shores. And important to understand that many of them are second-born sons, third-born sons who stood to inherit nothing. And in terms of opportunities, you were pretty limited in 18th century, what we now know, Germany. And so many of them sign up with the Hessians because there really weren't many opportunities. Attempting to identify individuals lost to history. This is why I became a historian. I always consider myself an advocate for the dead, of recovering stories and sharing stories. And so helping work with our park visitors to appreciate that. As I mentioned, the potential to connect with a modern day descendant community, really understanding the intersection of history, archaeology, and science, which is incredibly important to our project. Memorializing the landscape. It is a burial space. It is a sacred space. It is a ritual space now. And just recognizing overall the humanity of this project. So what is coming up? Next things. We've been working on stable isotope analysis of the teeth with University of Georgia Center for Applied Isotope Studies. This has been a crash course in science for this historian who probably should have paid more attention to her science classes because I'm lucky to work with a team of professionals who are very good at explaining pretty complicated science. And essentially, what you eat as a child, what you drink as a child imprints on your teeth and creates a unique signature that you can apply to geographic data points. And so University of Georgia has completed an analysis of many of those individuals' teeth. We know that those individuals, interestingly, all lived within a 30-mile radius of one another. And so we're talking like a fairly tight-knit community. They know that their diet was consistent with German origins, so like what wheat, barley, and oats. And we're hoping to pair that with the ongoing DNA analysis that we're working on. 2 years ago, we had partnered with Astria Forensics, which was a commercial lab, to do a DNA analysis of some of the teeth of our individuals. And that study was not particularly successful. Basically, they identified the individuals as male, which is helpful, but they couldn't get much data out of it. We connected then with Dr. Raquel Flesquez of Dartmouth, who is an ancient DNA expert. If anybody's familiar with her work, she's done amazing work at Jamestown, Colonial Williamsburg, and we are now actively working with her. She's not testing teeth, she's testing petrous bone, which is the temporal bone that's located behind your ear. And so if you sort of tap on that bone that's immediately behind your ear, it's a really dense bone that tends to have productive DNA. And so we have sent 3 samples to Raquel. She's actively working on this. We understand that they're initially getting some positive data from it. We're not quite sure what that is yet, but we're hopeful that we can continue to build out who these individuals were. Interestingly, of the 3 samples that we sent to her, 2 of those individuals have facial reconstruction, so number 7 and number 9. So we're hopeful that if we are going to get any DNA information, it's from the individuals that we have the facial reconstruction, so we can continue to build out their profiles and their stories. Final disposition of the remains. We are close to the end of our forensic analysis, and we are in conversation with Gloucester County to reinter on site. Everyone agrees that this is the best possible scenario so that we can create a space that is respected, that is memorialized, that is interpreted, so that people can come, they can pay their respects, they can learn more about the project and hope to understand this complicated moment in American history. The picture that you see on the screen here is what the Lake George Mass Burial Project is doing. So these are above ground burial vaults in this newly landscaped park. Their project is working to reinter individuals that have been recovered through active construction and real estate development in that area, unfortunately. And they are going to be reinterring those individuals Memorial Day weekend in 2026. And so there's a couple of these projects going on around the country, and we're all in conversation with one another about how, like, sort of best practices, how to proceed in this space. And the last thing I want to add is that, of course, while we are very invested in understanding the Hessian remains that we recovered, we are always on the lookout for a patriot burial. And so we did have the opportunity 2 years ago to explore a space that could have been a potential site for a patriot burial. The Philadelphia Inquirer in 1904 ran this tantalizing short article about when this fence here, this black fence was being installed, that they recovered quote unquote patriot bones. And so we were unsure if there are any American burials in the park. The problem with this site here by the fence is there's a steep drop off that's seeing a lot of erosion. So we wanted to make sure if there were individuals that had been buried there, that the site is preserved, it is stable, and if it wasn't, what could we do to mitigate that? And so we did not actually find any remains of any of the Patriot soldiers, but obviously, as we progress in our archaeological field studies at the park, this is something that we are keenly aware of. So just to close and to sort of wrap up, I've been talking for a really long time. I just like to share this quote from Roger Cohen of the New York Times. This was an article that ran in September of 2022, right after our project. And he was writing about the recovery of Ukrainian mass burials. And the headline struck me because of the work that we're doing. And it's the singular offense of the mass grave. And so he writes, every culture wants to memorialize its dead. Every family needs the missing to be identified to reach closure. And perhaps that is why a wartime mass grave offends something so deep in the human conscience. Any mass grave demands of our humanity the reconstruction of the individual lives ended here. And I always love ending with that because I just feel like it really captures the spirit of the project and the work that our team continues to do. So I will answer any questions that you might have, address any issues. I'm happy to spend all the time in the world.
Hey, Jennifer, it's Melissa here. I just wanted to apologize for missing the beginning of your talk. I had a conflicting appointment here at Monmouth, but thank you so much for joining us. And I'm just so floored by the sensitivity you bring to the work that you do, particularly your concerns about how different audiences might engage with the work, right? Like it's one thing for us to get so excited about the work that we are doing, but how you are constantly centering the fact that these aren't just historical actors, they aren't skeletons, right? These are human beings. So one, the respect that you show them and then the respect that you show your audiences is really, really impressive. So not a question, just a comment. Thank you for the tremendous work you are doing.
Thank you. I see Peter has a comment. I'm happy to share that. He wanted us to mention that Red Bank is one of only 58 National Historic Landmarks in New Jersey, which is true. Is the NPS helping? No, we're not a national park. We would have to apply for funding, through ABPP or another, element of the National Park Service. But we are a county entity, and of course, we are impacted like everybody else has been impacted in the world of federal funding. Thankfully, we are in pretty good shape. Raquel Flexquez for the DNA work is using her funds through Dartmouth, which is an amazing collaboration. And so for now, we are in reasonably good financial shape. So thank you for that, Peter.
I was kind of wondering, because this seems to me in a good way, this could be the never-ending project that you can, constantly have different things to look at and even different technology developing. So I was just sort of curious, as you're working with whether it's remains or other materials, is there a way that you're thinking of, oh, maybe somewhere in the future we could do more with this? When you're talking about reinterring, are you thinking about we may want access to this again?
Yeah, there's an active conversation with the NJSP about retaining samples and preserving those samples for future analysis, just because the technology is changing so quickly. Even like in the course of 3 years with this project, the gold standard for scientific analysis was always teeth, always send teeth. And now it's like now that has shifted. Petrus. Now like Petrus is like what people are understanding. And so that's extremely exciting in terms of, what in the future we could possibly understand. But definitely sample retention is a conversation that we're having. And also sample conservation. I think something important to understand, about scientific analysis is that you lose human material in this process. It's a destructive process, and they preserve as much as they can, and they send us back the material so that it can be interred with that individual. But you do have to make decisions about the conservation. Like, at what point do you say we have enough sampling, enough is enough, like we are good to go in that sense.
Okay, any other questions or comments? You can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type it in the chat and we would be happy to read it for you. Or Dr. Janofsky did such a thorough job that we don't even have questions.
Well, I'll tell you what, we do maintain a website through Rowan University. If you go to Rowan University and just type into the search bar Red Bank Battlefield, there's a whole website that talks about the history of the project. There's an amazing short film that the university produced. There's everything about our project team. That's where project updates are going to be, heading if we get new news about the project. That's where my contact information is. If you like public archaeology or you think you would like to participate with us this spring and summer, we do have public days of participation through the Rowan University Field School, and so you do get to dig with us. And each summer is a new amazing artifact that we discover, and that moment of connection with our park visitors is really powerful. So please feel free to reach out to me if you would like to participate.
And Tara just put the field school link in the chat while Gary Sretsky is affirming what I suggested, that Jen covered the topic so well and thoroughly that we don't have any questions. So thank you so much, Dr. Janofsky. And Dr. Rotunda, you think we're ready to wrap? Did you have any closing remarks?
No, I could just remind everyone about, the upcoming events. Tara put a link in there, December 3rd, the one with the Princeton Preservation Group on Acorn Hall, and then December 4th, our meeting and author awards.
Okay, then I think we are all set.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate your interest in the project.
Thank you. That was great.